So I was going to record this with my camera again, but it broke. And the only thing that I have left is one of those old Logitech eyeball cameras. You know, the god-awful ones from the early 2000s? Yeah, one of those. Since I'm not willing to subject myself to that, I'm just going to stick with a flat picture for this video. I've been using this cheap PC for a while now, and I think I've finally got a good grasp of what it's capable of with and without a graphics card. So what I've done is I have ordered the Intel equivalent. It was slightly more expensive. I actually got it on sale for 65 bucks. So as soon as that gets here, I will be able to compare the two and give a good analysis on which one would be the better way to go if you chose to go that route in building your new PC. I will not be purchasing a case because all cases provide the same functionality. Really the only reason to get a new case is if you're looking for extra USB ports on the front panel or aesthetics for the most part. If you're on a budget, any case will work. I will be using the same RAM and graphics card for the tests that require a graphics card because I want to keep these on an even playing field. I don't want to change anything up. The Intel version happens to come with a much better motherboard. That can't be helped. They just don't have a lot of offerings in the exact same ballpark, around 2 gigahertz quad core for an embedded solution. So, like I said, that can't really be helped. Another thing that can't be helped is that this new motherboard is a micro ATX, which means it won't be able to fit in the exact same cases as my ITX or micro ITX motherboard. Any bigger motherboard case should be able to fit it, but anything that's micro ITX, of course, will not fit a micro ATX. So, once again, I sent an email asking the manufacturer to send me a review copy, and they said no, so I bought it. That's another 70 bucks I won't be seeing back. But, it's all for science, so it's good. To help recuperate some of the costs that I am sort of generating with these purchases, I will be putting these computers up for sale after the reviews are complete. So this might be a month. I want to get all the data that I possibly can. I'm actually using these pretty much daily at my place of work. So I'll have a really good idea of what these are truly capable of. Moving on, I sort of found out that you could kind of compare these to the current generation consoles, not the Scorpio or the PlayStation Neo or anything like that, but the regular Xbox One and the regular PlayStation 4, because at least the one that I have now has very similar specs and capabilities. They're not console killers, but this is going to be what you can expect from a console equivalent PC. Not console price, console equivalent. These will actually be cheaper than a console. In general, you're going to see lower frame rate than the console, but more functionality. And the lower frame rate is due to the console's high optimization for these games. That's one of the main benefits of owning a console. I tested both with and without a graphics card, and even without a graphics card, certain titles actually did perform much better than the console equivalent, and these are usually older titles such as StarCraft 2, Dirt 3, Fable Anniversary, Skyrim, Bioshock 2, the original Dark Souls game, that's Dark Souls 1, if you use DS Fix, which is required on all computers, mind you. It met the console, sort of, in quite a few titles, and I say meet console by plus or minus 15%. On the titles that exceeded the console, they exceeded it by 25% or better, and in many of them it exceeded it by a crap ton. We're talking 75 to sometimes even 100% better than what the console was capable of. But some of the titles that were meeting or being around what the console is capable of would be Payday 2, Saints Row 3, Dark Souls 2, Scholar of the First Sin, and Rocket League is a pretty popular one right now that this computer was meeting the console with. And this is without the graphics card. With the graphics card, it didn't make a whole lot of a difference because it was kind of a crappy graphics card, but it was better. Now, there were certain titles that it absolutely failed on. Diablo 3 was playable, but it's not a very enjoyable experience. It was hovering at around 25 to 35 FPS, and I did kind of put it through the ringer. Even on the lowest settings, I made sure to be wearing clothing and weapons that had particle effects and stuff like that to help really weed out the bugs in the system. Dark Souls 3 barely ran. Grand Theft Auto 5 barely ran, even with the graphics card. It wasn't good. So my overall score would be 3 out of 10, or just meh. Usable but shitty. Perfect for like a poor high school kid or a college kid, It gets the job done, and you can even play some games on it. And again, we're talking about like $200, including the graphics card. And if you go to kingwin.net and purchase a code for Windows 10, you're looking at $230 with the graphics card, including the operating system. Now, most of these tests I did without the graphics card, so not counting that, we're talking $190 including the operating system, or just like $150 for just the core components. I think that's pretty good for what we've got. Now this is the AMD build. It's based around the A6 5200. I don't remember the exact specifications off the top of my head. I remember it was a 2 gigahertz quad core. I put 8 gigabytes of RAM in it. If you really want the full specifications of the system, you can check out my other video on it. It's got a lot more detail. And the system that I'm going to be comparing it to, the Intel equivalent, is currently in the mail. It will have a very, very minor advantage on actual frequency. It is a 2.08 gigahertz quad core, but that's such a small advantage. It's literally 0.8 gigahertz faster. It does have, I believe, more on-chip cache than the A6 5200 did, so that might affect it quite a bit. And what this will be a good test of is the Intel's 8th generation onboard graphics versus the A6. So I'm kind of interested to see how that'll play out. And for those of you who want to look up the specs yourself, this will be based on the Intel N3150. That's the N3150 CPU. And naturally, being a micro ATX motherboard instead of mini ITX, there are a lot more options on the motherboard as well, including USB 3.0. It has 2 PCI Express 1X slots and 1 PCI Express 16X, which means in addition to a graphics card, you can put extra accessories in, such as built-in Wi-Fi. You could put a PCI Express X1 SSD if you really wanted to. You could put pretty much anything you want that fits in those slots. For some reason, they decided to include what looks like a parallel header on the motherboard. Not quite sure why they would do that. But in addition to VGA and HDMI, the motherboard also has DVI, as opposed to the motherboard I used last time, which only had VGA and HDMI. This motherboard also has 2 USB 3.0 slots, as opposed to just the USB 2.0 on the other one. And most notably, this CPU, I believe, only uses 6 watts of power, which is less than the one that we used last time, which was already quite an efficient CPU. And another thing that's quite interesting is because of the low heat that it is going to generate, this is a fanless computer completely, if you're not using a graphics card, which should have a fan. But just the motherboard by itself using onboard graphics, no fans whatsoever. This is a passively cooled system. So hey, I mean, we could literally be noiseless. That's going to be exciting. And I actually do mean that, because the teeny tiny fan that's on the other system sucks. It's incredibly loud and annoying, and it, even putting the relatively small case underneath my desk, it is very loud. Overall, I'm expecting the Intel equivalent to be slightly better, but I'm not really expecting all that much. I suppose we're just going to have to see on that one, won't we? Now, for those of you who have actually stuck around till the end of the video, I appreciate that. Thank you. And please leave me a comment in the description. I want to know what you guys want to see. There's no reason for me to make a video if no one's going to watch it. And it's not like I really care about how many people watch my videos, but I want to know that you guys are getting something out of this. I don't want to make a video that's useless, you know? So let me know what you guys want to see, and I'll see if I can oblige. If my budget can accommodate. Well, this is Kitsep signing off. Have a good one.